Well, we'll go ahead and get started with our next forum, this Newnan-Coweta Chamber of Commerce forum, continuing with our congressional primaries tonight. We have all of our candidates from the Republican primary race coming up. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our audience out here. Of course, we welcome you to Wadsworth Hall here in downtown Newnan, where we're going to hear from these candidates running for the 3rd Georgia Congressional District seat held by the retiring Congressman Len Westmoreland. We want to thank, of course, as we have the City of Newnan for the hall, Steve Hill for his assistance in tonight's forum, and the many people who have worked to put this together and make sure all of this works well tonight. And also to New Link and the other folks who are here, making sure that we'll have this televised and on our chamber website, and we appreciate all the work that's been put into all of that. As you know, Marvin McCoy hosted and moderated the very first of our forums tonight for these congressional primaries coming up on May 24th. Tonight's forums are sponsored by the Newnan-Coweta Chamber of Commerce, and we intend in these to focus on the candidates who are out here tonight running for their party's nomination to the 3rd Georgia District seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. We have Samuel Anders, Mike Crane, Richard Mixon. I apologize if I get anybody out of order. Please let me know. But with Jim Pace, Drew Ferguson, Chip Flanagan, and Rod Thomas, thank y'all very much for coming out here tonight. And of course, on behalf of our community and our Chamber of Commerce, thank you also for running for this important seat. We appreciate the dedication that you're showing to your country and to this community by doing so and putting yourself out there for that. Our format is going to be similar to all of the chamber forums that we've done in recent years and that we've held this election year as well. Each candidate out here is going to be allowed a 2-minute opening and then a 2-minute closing statement during our forum. Our candidates have up to 1 minute then to respond to a series of questions in between. And of course, we're going to try to get to as many of those as we can. With such a large group, of course, we're not going to get to nearly as many as we would like to, but we're going to try to do that within the bounds of human endurance over the next hour or so. After that final candidate, as we go down the line, and we'll stagger these over the course of the night, and after that final candidate gives an answer to a question, then a 30-second rebuttal is going to be allowed if the candidates elect. Our candidates also are going to be signaled. We have timekeepers right down here. Y'all are prepared to signal when we get to that 1-minute time limit or 2-minute time limit or what have you. We'll give you a little leeway. But again, with such a large number of people on stage tonight, we do ask that you try to respect those time limits as much as possible so that we can get in as much as we can. We're also going to, as I said, alternate as we go along, so nobody's going to have to answer first and last each time and that sort of thing. One final note, Newnan-Coweta Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan organization. It does not endorse candidates for office. Questions have been submitted by chamber members and apply equally to all the candidates up here tonight. We ask that our guests here in Wadsworth Hall respect that neutrality as well and the dignity of this occasion in general by refraining from any demonstration for or against any candidate. We know all of y'all support different folks here. We respect that, but we also ask you to respect all of these candidates' abilities to answer the questions, talk about some of the issues that we're going to bring up tonight. And also, again, the neutrality of this. We ask that you hold your applause or any show of support as well, or opposition during our forum for issues that are talked about, even for, in fact, especially for the issues that we all feel strongly about. And again, we're going to ask that you give our candidates this stage and this opportunity to talk about these issues tonight. Our occasion is meant to give, again, these candidates a chance to speak for themselves as they seek election to these posts. And again, gentlemen, we appreciate you doing so and coming out tonight. With that, we're going to begin tonight's forum, and we're going to start with a 2-minute opening statement for each one of you. Mr. Anders, I'm going to turn to you first, if you will. Now, just to remind everybody, you have a microphone in front of you. You can simply, if you like, pivot that mic towards you. You don't have to get it very close, but you do need to get it, turn it towards you a bit, I think, to make sure, and we'll signal if you need to get a little bit closer or anything like that. But with that, we're going to start with 2-minute opening statements. Please tell us, if you would, please, a little bit about yourself, what issues are most important to you, and why you are seeking this seat. Mr. Anders, you first.
Well, sir, I'd definitely like to say thank you for having us out tonight, and thank you to everybody else in the audience. One of the things I always do on these speeches is I always point out my wife because that's the most important lady in my life, apart from the other three girls that I have, and I don't feel like I can ever do her justice for her support that she gives me. So I always like to say thank you to Catherine. So, my name's Sam Anders. Me and Catherine have been married for about 13 years now. We attend Southside Church. We have three girls. Lily's 10, Hollis is 8, and Madeline's 7. And again, I had that issue last night trying to remember their names. You think I'd get it right by about now. They go to Thomas Crossroads Elementary School and Lee Middle School, so we are definitely vested within the community. I always tout myself as just a regular average day guy. I'm just a hardworking American. Me and my family are just like everybody else here. On the civilian side of the house, I work for a company called Sinclair Systems. We make all the annoying little labels that you guys see on your fruit. So now from this point onward, you will always think of me when you see that label on the fruit, which is a good thing, I hope. On the other side of the house, I'm also an Air Force Reserve, a Master Sergeant of 16 years. I moved over to the reserve side of the house so that I could continue my service to this country. I feel that it's just an extension. I always want to make sure that I serve my country in every way possible. And while I've upheld and defended the Constitution for the last 16 years, this is just another step. So hopefully, God willing, we'll make it through and I'll be doing double duty. For me, I guess a big part of it comes down to national security. The world these days is far more unpredictable than what it used to be. 5 years ago, the Islamic State didn't exist. Russia wasn't in Crimea. China wasn't creating islands out of rocks. And North Korea and Iran weren't pushing the limits of American patience. That, for me, is a big priority. And I think we need to get back to good old American values, hardworking, the American dream, and actually be proud to be American. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crane, your opening statement.
Good evening. How's everybody doing this evening? Smiles? Very good. I mean, we're at home, folks, so let's be thankful for that. My family, much of them are here. My beautiful wife Tracy and daughter Caitlin are here with us. My lovely mother-in-law and a lot of family and friends, because this is what we call home. And I like how the chamber calls it prosperity's front door. And I think our local chamber does a great job of helping grow our community in a very proactive, productive, and a positive way here at the local level, because they promote the values that we promote here locally. And the beauty of Prosperity's front door, I believe, is that fact that it's based on freedom's foundation. And if you haven't noticed, freedom's under assault, my friends. The government's in our homes, the government's in our businesses, and now the government wants to get involved in the things we hold most dear, our faith. They want to get into us and tell us what we can and cannot believe. They want to tell us what God says and whether that's appropriate or not. We have a government that's out of control and gone outside of its constitutional boundaries. For the last 5 years, I've been your state senator for those of you who live in the 28th district, and I've fought the good fight to promote freedom, to promote liberty, to promote equal treatment under the law, to make your home safe, to make our community safe, and to make the future bright for our kids. Isn't that what we're all obliged to do at some level? So I'd hope tonight you listen closely and see that there's a difference in what we think the role of government should be in each of our lives. And so I would invite you to consider closely my track record in promoting liberty over government, freedom over oppression. And I'd invite you to find out more about us at MikeCraneForCongress.com and see why May 2nd you need to check that box number 2 on the ballot and vote for Mike Crane. God bless you. Look forward to the questions tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferguson?
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and so glad that you're here tonight. My name is Drew Ferguson, and I'm from West Point, Georgia. And I learned at a very early age that service to others is the cornerstone of our society and our faith. And it's what led me to run for mayor of my hometown. It's what led me to practice dentistry and to stay involved in my community. But I'm running for Congress because I watched Washington, the bad policies in Washington, almost destroy my hometown of West Point, Georgia. For almost 20 years, hope faded to black. Our businesses began to close, our schools began to fail. We saw generational poverty set in for the first time, and we saw the fabric of our community torn apart. But instead of leaving, I decided to stay and fight the good fight. And we united a community and we rebuilt a city. And we did that by coming together and getting government out of the way and creating the environment where we could create jobs. I'm proud to be a leader that helped Kia Motors Manufacturing of Georgia create over 15,000 manufacturing jobs in our community. It not only revitalized our city, but it helped sustain economically a big part of this third district. We were able to recruit a Christian university to our downtown, and what once was a failing community is now an economic engine full of hope and prosperity and success. I've led my city through major reforms, and I truly believe that I can lead the third district down that same path. But I need your help, and I hope you'll consider voting for me on May 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. We're at $19.5 trillion in debt. Everybody's part of that's about $58,000. Now, in my business life, in my personal life, I'm debt free. I've been a small business owner for 36 years. Now, I happened to go to the Soviet Union about 15, 20 years ago on short-term missions when they destroyed their economy. We are facing an economic chaos that's caused by the Washington cartel that have bought and paid for our politicians. They're not listening to us. Washington is broken. They're listening to the lobbyists that pay them. The federal election, the presidential election, you're seeing all of the old politicians have been knocked out because they've been taking the lobby money, and the people are tired of it. They're tired of being abused, and they're tired of being used. Now, my family, I have two little daughters, so I get their part of the debt, and I've got a beautiful wife, and I get her part. So I'm about $225,000 in debt because the federal government put us there. If we're going to save Social Security and we're going to keep from going over the cliff, the financial cliff, we're going to have to send people to Washington that know how to get us out of debt. I know how. I've done it. I've been successfully out of debt for 15 years. And I've been successfully running a small business and balancing my books for 36 years. This is not that hard, but it takes fiscal responsibility. And you've got to be willing to not take the lobby money. I'm the only candidate that has refused to take it, that has put it on his website. I will not take the lobby money. They offer, but I won't take it until you're willing to send people up there that have the absolute will not take the federal lobby money. My business customers have taught me if I take $5,000, they expect $5,000 in service. It's just that simple. Thank you. Appreciate you going to my website. Want your vote on the 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix.
I traveled, is this on? Is it on? Okay, there we go. I traveled great distances to be here this evening. My wife, Kelly, who's right down here, and I own Full Circle Toys. Since we're on New Link, I'll give a gratuitous plug, which is about a 9-iron distance right up the hill here. I am a small business owner. I am not a politician. I had no visions of being sitting here in front of you 3 months ago. Never had it on my radar screen. The opportunity presented itself, and as a small business owner, and many friends who are small business owners, I know that everyone in this country is working harder and harder for less and less over the course of the last few years. We're heading in the wrong direction. Despite that, I'm still extremely optimistic about this country. We're the greatest nation on earth, and I think we can get back there very quickly if we can stop the direction the country is heading in. I want to start a little bit here by saying what I said at the very beginning of this race 3 months ago when we had our first forum, and that is that I think the people of this district should be stoked, and I use the word stoked, for the people that are here on the stage, because we have a great group of people. I genuinely like, personally, everybody on the stage. I've had a chance to meet their families, get to know them. We travel around the district together at these forums, and you've got a great group of guys to choose from. But this is not about choosing the candidate that is a nice guy. It's about choosing the candidate that can best represent the people of this district. When they originally created this position, it was called the People's House, and it was created so that someone from the community who has the values of that community, that shares with their neighbors the values and the beliefs and the morals, et cetera, of that community, could go to Washington, D.C. and represent the people in that community. Chip spoke to the Washington cartel. I know that 3 people on the stage have been to Washington, D.C. during this campaign looking for that lobby money. I'm not doing that either. I'm here to represent the people. I want to go to Washington, D.C., serve the people, and then I want to come home. So I hope you'll consider Richard Mix May the 2nd through May the 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pace.
Good evening. I'm going to be a little different tonight. I'm not going to wait to the end to ask for your vote. I'm going to ask for your vote right up front. Everyone else waited to the end, so we all agree we want your vote. You just get to pick who you vote for. I am Jim Pace. Mary and I have been married for 44 years. We've been together for 48 years. And she is definitely the best friend I've ever had, and one of the reasons that I'm running. The other 11 of them are my 3 children and my 8 grandchildren. And Mary, pretty soon we're going to have 2 more grandchildren, so I'll have to modify that number to 13. But it's a frequent question, and I think a fair question. Why do I want to do this? And the answer that I consistently give is that I don't want to do this. It's no different than the guys who boarded the big green army buses after Pearl Harbor was bombed. They didn't want to go either, but they went because it was their duty. And my dad was one of those people. I'm willing to go to Washington because God has blessed Mary and I. We've had a great life. We've had a great business career. I've been a businessman for all of the 44 years that we've been married. I worked for big companies early on, positions like Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Westinghouse. I started my own company in 1989, a company that's a construction development company in Peachtree City called Group 6. It has been a wonderful experience. I have been blessed, and I would like to go to Washington to try to preserve that opportunity for my children and my grandchildren. So while I don't need a title, I don't need the commute for sure, I do want to be able to look my grandkids in the eye and say that I did everything I could to keep you safe.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas.
That thing's heavy, dude.
Thank you, Jim. My name is Rod Thomas. They have Arnold here, so I want to get that straightened out to begin with. I live over near between Turkey Creek and Poplar Road, right here in East Newnan. But I was born and raised down in Savannah on a farm out from Savannah. I'm a farm boy, and I learned to do hard work there. I think hard work first is one of the most important things that you need for someone who's going to go to this position. The second thing is that you have to be able to be well educated and have a knowledge background. And the third is you have to have leadership. And leadership, experience. I don't mean just leadership in a few things. Well, I was born in 1943 when Ellis Arnold was governor. I'm his namesake. My mother named me after him. And I went to Georgia Southern College, was president of my class there. Then I went to Georgia State after I went to there, and then went to Vietnam. I spent 13 months in Vietnam and worked in investigations division. Telling everything about your life in 3 minutes is hard to do. Just go to rodthomasforcongress.org and you'll be able to read all my bio and all my information. But I finished at Georgia State, and I finished I have 2 masters, 6 years, and I finished all the doctorate except I can't write real well. And so I didn't pass my comps. So, but I do have the information. I did internships at Florida, Alabama, Auburn, University of Florida, Bruton Parker, and Georgia State University at, what's that little town over there? Conyers. So I'm well educated. I have the work ethic, or I would never have done that. So you need to read at rodthomas.org all of the qualifications, because Rod Thomas has the best qualifications, or he wouldn't be running for this seat. I feel that I have the best qualifications. So I just ask for your vote, and I ask for your interest enough that you'll go there and read it. So go to Rod Thomas for Congress, congress.org. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again, gentlemen, for coming. Thanks for those opening statements. We'll go to a series of questions now that, unless I say otherwise, will be 1 minute apiece. We are going to talk about issues, but want to ask you to continue to talk about yourselves just a little bit, and I'll tell you how. We'll start with Mr. Crane on this one. We started with Mr. Anders. First time we'll start with Mr. Crane on this one. All of you referenced, even if briefly, your professional lives, perhaps your past political lives, or some of your career, your civic associations. Talk about those a little bit. Talk about your professional life. You are seeking, as someone put it, a seat in the people's house. That means you're going to have relationships with, I think it's 434 other House members in some form or fashion, or some coalitions thereof. You're going to have those relationships and those decision-making abilities when you get into that mix and try to provide constituent service and so on. How has your professional life and your past lives, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying, informed that? How have your professional lives informed how you would make those decisions and build those relationships?
Well, Dean, that's a good question, and it helps you frame some answers and gives people some context about us, because not everybody knows me personally. And so when I was 15, I thought I had the world all figured out, and I was pretty sure what I was going to do when I got older, and so I was going to be a professional skateboarder. And I actually got sponsored by a team. Yes, it's true. I got pictures to prove it. And but I found out that I was honestly a better skateboard ramp builder than I was a skateboarder. And so I enjoyed building so much. I started my first company at 18 while I was going to Georgia Tech, where I met my beautiful bride. And I've been building ever since. And so as a general contractor, at one point in time, I think I was licensed in as many as 17 states, building for major corporations all over the country, performing projects in restricted time frames, and living a budget. I mean, construction's a really interesting dynamic. It's like a concentrated view of our lives. You've got this amount of time to get something accomplished, and you got to do it on budget and on time. And so I think it's been a very helpful learning tool to put me in a position to understand what role government really should have in our lives. And I certainly know there's way too much government in the construction industry. Does anybody want to challenge that idea? There's way too much government in virtually every industry, and I want to put an end to that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferguson, same question.
Okay. About the 10th grade, I decided through some contacts that I wanted to go to dental school. And I have enjoyed that career, was able to finish at the University of Georgia and go to the Medical College of Georgia. Moved back to my community that was really had fallen on hard times, and really enjoyed the process of rebuilding it and seeing it come back to life. But there are two unique perspectives that I can take to Washington right now. The first is that of a mayor of a city that has been reborn. We understand firsthand where the hurdles are that Washington puts in our way. We understand how important it is to get business back on the right track and to create the environment by getting the taxes much, much lower at the corporate level, much flatter, much more fair, and also removing the regulations. I also have the unique perspective of health care. One of the things that is affecting every single American right now is the Affordable Care Act. Whether you're a business owner, whether you're a patient, or whether you're a healthcare provider. And being able to have those two perspectives is very unique for this position.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
Yeah, can you restate that question? Because the
it may take
answers
me
I
a
got,
moment.
yeah, I think that was just a little different than what we were looking for.
It was. I'm asking you, look back in your or tell us a little bit about your professional life, and that might also include maybe a past political office or civic association. Tell us how that's going to affect your decision making and your relationship building should you be elected to the U.S. House of Representatives.
One of the things that I've learned, I've been a small business owner for 36 years, and my business helps other businesses get going. And also because we provide stuff that nonprofits need, they all come to see me. I help the general contractors. I help the nonprofits get their events going. And I've been just so pleased to help raise money for all kinds of different civic organizations. And one of the things that I've found is that if you don't care who gets credit, you'll get a lot more done. And I've helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for cancer and other things. And just because by putting ourselves out there and allowing other people to get credit for it, then and that's really what I'm going to take to Washington is the ability to help other people be successful. That's really, really where I've seen people work together. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix.
Same question?
Yes, please.
Mike, when I was 15, I wanted to be an astronaut. I still have not yet given up on that dream. So if this congressional thing doesn't work out, maybe I'll head to Houston and see what we can do down there. I worked in the film industry for 10 years on the production side of the business. And for those of you that know anything about film production, it is the most budgeted, the most scheduled, the most, you can't miss a filming because of rain. You better have a backup plan and a backup plan to that backup plan. It's very high pressure. You spend about 60% of your budget in a disproportionate amount of your time. So in other words, you work on a project for 2 years, and then in a 30-day time frame, you spend 60% of the money that you have to do that project. So it's very high pressure. And that prepares you to deliver a project on time, on budget, to work with teams of people in very long 6-day weeks, long hours, in harsh environments sometimes when people are tired. And I have a proven track record of getting that job done and bringing people together to accomplish a common goal. And that's probably been one of the most challenging and rewarding things I've done in my life, is work in the film industry in that capacity.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Pace.
Well, you know, it's not so much what I want to say about myself. I think that would be important to you. I've told you that I worked in large corporations. I formed my own corporation in 1989. 27 years later, we've constructed well over 600 commercial projects, never been sued, always completed the project in accordance with expectations. I would say to you that the things that mean the most to me are the things that I've been able to do to give back. I was the chairman of the YMCA. I was the chairman of the Young Life Committee of Fayette County. In fact, Mary and I helped bring Young Life into the county. I actually was on the relocation task force that picked West Point, Georgia for Atlanta Christian College, volunteer. But the things that touched me the most is being selected the Golden Eagle recipient in 2015 by the Boy Scouts of America for my humanitarian service. I was recently selected as the Humanitarian of the Year by the Fayette Care Clinic for my humanitarian service. I served as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in Fayette County. I served as the leader of the Regional Business Coalition for 2 years. And if you don't know what that is, that's 16 metropolitan chambers of commerce who come together at the regional level. So I've been involved in a lot of things like that. The thing I'm most proud of is a program that I started called Cows for Christ. And I see this big red envelope over here waving at me, so you'll have to see me later if you want to know about Cows for Christ.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas.
Yes. That seemed to work.
I came to Newnan about 2 years ago, and I've worked with the Friendship Baptist Church, and we give out food to about 500 people every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We give out vegetables and groceries. And 2 Saturdays a month, we give out 40 pounds of meat and 20 pounds of groceries. And I really got into the program, and one of my platforms is that I'm pledging that I'm going to take only of the 174,000, I'm only take 48,000, and I'm going to donate the rest to the food programs throughout the district from that. But one of the things that really, the whole thing boils down to two things in my whole life. I'm much older than these guys and a lot more wiser. But one of the main things that boils down to is our churches. I was raised in churches. I was a pastor when I was 18. And then I got a great education, having 7 college degrees now. Well, between the two, here in Coweta County, I looked around and we have 300 churches here in Coweta. And we have, within the district itself, there's over 1,000 schools. Between those two, I want us to learn to live within our means, and I've always lived within my means. Everybody has to do it. This is the story of life. We all have to live within our means. And those two institutions teach us that. The church teaches us through our hearts, and the schools teach us through our minds to be able to live within our means and to do due diligence and get things done. And that's what I intend to do in Washington. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anders.
So if some of you haven't already noticed, I have a little bit of an accent. I was born in the United States, and I do have a birth certificate to prove it, so we're all good on that front. So I came back to the United States back in '99, sold up everything I owned. I went to school and did high school and college and everything there, sold up everything I owned, came to the U.S. with, I think it was like 2 suitcases and probably about $500. The reason I point that out is because I was chasing the American dream, and I think I finally found it, and I'm continuing to live it. And I think that's what everybody wants to do. And another reason that I point that out is because I want you to know that I'm not afraid to take the hard steps in life to get to where we need to get to. Because can you imagine at the age of 23 selling up everything you own and then moving to a country that you know, but you've never grown up there? And there's a lot of different things here than there is back in the UK. I joined the military, and I think that's one of the biggest things when we talk about what can we do and how can we achieve things. Anybody that's ever served in the military knows that you talk about melting pots. That's probably like the biggest melting pot around. And at the end of the day, you need to get the mission done and you need to complete it. And you also need to take care of your people. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I bring to the table is that I can look after each and every one of you, and we may not always agree on it. But at the end of the day, it's your voice that counts. And so it's no different than when orders come down for me to complete the mission. That's what I'm going to do. So I guess that's probably one of the biggest things I bring to the table.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad we did that. Just noted, it's just an interesting and very impressive set of backgrounds sitting at this table, and a very diverse set of backgrounds. So thank you all for doing that and sharing that with us. We'll move on to a few questions. The very first question we're going to take will give you a little bit of elbow room, up to 2 minutes if you would like. We're going to start with Mr. Ferguson. This is on the economy in general. So I'm going to ask your general impression. Please dispute these figures as things I've read recently. U.S. economy appears to have grown at a very sluggish 0.6% annualized rate for the first quarter of this year. That follows a very sluggish 2015. Though we have seen some improvement in the economy, I know for example, the unemployment rate seems to be hovering around 5% or just below or just over that. Nationwide, we still have a very historically low job participation rate among working age people as well, and a growth rate well under that 3.5–4% that has often characterized the American economy. I guess what I'm asking is, are those things that we need to be worried about, particularly worried about? What is your view of the U.S. economy? And if elected to Congress, what would you advocate towards addressing our economic situation?
Well, I think you summed it up very well. Our economy is sluggish. We have struggled for several years now. The past 4 years in particular have been hard on many Americans, and I think it lies in the fact that Washington is too big. It continues to strangle business. We tax the thing that we want the most at the highest level of anybody else in the world, and those are jobs. We have to lower the federal tax rate on individuals and corporations. And we continue to pile on hidden costs to our business community year after year with additional regulations. They add cost every single day, and it does not matter if you're a manufacturer or if you're a small business and have a small dental practice. We spend tens of thousands of dollars a year that add cost to the goods and services to my patients on government regulations and compliance. And I am just one business, and it happens all along our business community spectrum, from individual business owners all the way up to the largest corporate citizens. So we have to lighten the tax burden. We have to remove the regulations that continue to strangle our businesses, and we have got to control the spending in Washington. We are burdened with a bureaucracy that continues to heap cost on our business community, and we have seen the results of that time and time again. So let's make this place the greatest place in the world to do business. Let's create the right tax structure for that. Let's free up the regulations that continue to strangle businesses. Let's get Washington out of the way and not allow them to continue to put hurdles in the way that communities need to develop. And one of the most important parts of that is education. We have to get the federal government out of local education decisions. We have seen how this one-size-fits-all policy of trying to educate the children in the 3rd District is the same as Detroit, Michigan. It's not working. We need to be allowed to be creative, to tailor our educational experience so that our students, our young students, and our young adults are prepared to take the jobs in a given particular area, and our businesses have the workforce available that they need.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
The economy has really not, it's recovered some. It's certainly better. Unemployment in real value, because of the participation rate, is still poor. As a small business owner, I'm constantly using labor, and it is getting a little tougher to get labor. When it's really, really bad, it's easy. They're coming in all the time begging for jobs. Right now, it's beginning to get a little tougher, and things are beginning to improve. Construction in Coweta County is coming back. Construction in Henry County, Clayton County, we're still suffering a little bit more because we had a dysfunctional school board and a crazy man for a sheriff. We just decided to destroy our economy 4 years ahead of the rest of the country. We, lost our accreditation. But I can tell you about that another time. Anyway, in the macro level, the government, all taxation is like a leech on the economy. Every time you take money out of the economy, there's less money to provide jobs, to grow industry, and the government takes that money. That when the deficit spending, when the government borrows all that money, it takes out of the pool of money that the businesses use. It creates all this havoc and these bubbles that we're having to suffer through. I opened my business in 1980. Okay, the interest rates were 18 to 22% if you could borrow money. Inflation was running 15%. I mean, it was easier to start a business than get a job. And I've watched bubble after bubble and recession after recession, and most of them are caused by the government interfering. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, and it's what the founders built this country on, the free market system. It had never happened before. They decided to try this experiment, and we are the result. The greatest nation in the world was an experiment by the founders. We've got to get back to what the founders envisioned: free people doing what they want in the pursuit of happiness. That's what happens. That's why we invented the airplane. That's why we invented the assembly line. We can compete with anyone if you'll just get the government out of the way.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix.
I think you're going to find that across the table here, we're pretty much going to say a lot of the same things about this. I would say that one of the biggest indicators of growth in this country is the GDP. And until we can get that to be around 4%, we've been stagnating around 2.5%. For a long time. And I think what we're seeing things start to move. We're starting to see houses being built, dirt being pushed around that we haven't seen around here in a long time. But I think a lot of it is people have just decided they're not going to wait any longer. They're going to do it despite the government being in the way. So I think Drew touched on the three things, and the three things are quite simple. As a small business owner, and I'll add that I've owned and operated 4 small business. I came, like Mr. Pace here, I came from the corporate world. I worked for Dun& Bradstreet. I left in 1995 to start my own business. I've worked very hard. Somebody told me if you started your own business, you could work half days. I didn't realize that meant 12 hours. I thought that meant I got to go home at lunch. So, but in the last 21 years, I've started 4 small businesses, and all of those are still going today. And if we could have, as he mentioned, less regulation, get the government out of the way. We're all being regulated more and more and more and more. Less taxation. And then I think the critical part to move things in the right direction is education. And we're seeing that. Great examples. We talked for 12 for Life in Carrollton the other night. We talked about that. We talked about the CEC over here and what a great program that is. And I think we need to continue to grow things so we can create the right kind of jobs, because everybody doesn't need a college education. We're going to devalue that. We need to create the jobs that can really, where the rubber meets the road, and create the jobs where people can be welders and be construction people and people that contribute to society and get out there and work every day to keep this country moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pace.
I think the economy is quite anemic, and I think the government is largely responsible. Now, the government would turn around and say, no, you're responsible. You're a small business. You've done well. You've made money, and so you're the problem. We need to tax you more. What we have is an exodus of our manufacturing capacity. If you look at what the label would have said when I was growing up, it would have said made in America, made in USA. Today, mostly it says made in China. China has assumed the large manufacturing role. India has taken over the data, the internet, and so forth, the programming. Mexico, the assembly. We talk about minimum wages. I would pay as much as I could possibly pay for the work performed, but it's going to pass to the consumer at some point. And right now we have more people taking money away from the government than putting in the government. We've just tipped that point where we've got, on a macro level, we've got 51% on welfare or some government subsidies and 49% putting in. And so when you look at that, we're out of balance. The other place we're out of balance is that there are far more old people today than I think was anticipated. I'm probably nearing being one of them, but we have far fewer young people. And so the pyramid, if you will, is not a pyramid anymore. We don't have a broad base of young people supporting a very few old people. What we have is more old people than we have young people in the workforce. So when you start talking about how do we fix the economy, you're going to have to get that base built back. You're going to have to get the tax structure fixed. And by all means, you're going to have to get the bureaucracy out of it. We are so overregulated that it costs us more to operate the business than it ever should. If they would just leave us alone and let us do what we do and stop micromanaging it, I think the economy would recover quite well. But I'm personally concerned that we've allowed this out of balance condition, and it's going to be very difficult to fix it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas.
That's on the large scale, we're talking about the whole government and the whole economy. But it all gets back to the budget. I mean, you budget, we have to budget to run these campaigns. You know, I had to form a budget. Mr. Biggs had to form a budget. Everybody has to do a budget. And yet we don't do that in the government, you know. I support the fair tax, you know, or the flat tax, either one. I support also getting rid of the IRS. I mean, you know, so that we can move it out and bring in new ways of doing things. So, but you got to have a budget, and you got to have, you know, you got to go back to your means again. You got to live within your means. If we start doing it as an example, it has to come from the bottom up, I think. I don't think we can go to Washington and talk about it, because all they do is go up there and talk. We can prove it by doing it here. We can start in the 3rd district. That's all I want to do, is to serve the 3rd district and be an example and work with people and have committees to work on it and show how to do it and let it move up. I mean, because it's not going to come down. I don't think it's going to come down. I'm going to think it has to go up.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anders.
Have you ever been talking with somebody, you kind of getting into a good conversation or a debate, and then the other person turns around and says, well, now you're just using common sense, right? And that's what we're lacking a lot of in our government these days. So everybody up here is probably going to sit and say, well, we need to get government out. We need to get government out. And yes, of course we need to get government out. But what can we do with the system that we've currently got in place? Because we all want government out, but we still have to work somewhat within what we've got right now. The budget and the economy are kind of akin to common core math, in my opinion, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So when we look at budgets, when I look at my budget at work or my budget at my house, for me, it's what's coming in and what's going out. And it's about time we took stock of America and stopped spending money overseas and stopped sending money to other countries and actually look at where we're at. Look at our budget. Look at where our money's coming in. Look at it line by line, item by item, year on year, so that you, the American people, can see where the money's going. We don't need a big convoluted stack of papers. We just need simple. We need to know where the money's going, where it's being spent, and then until you do that, you can't see where you need to truly make the cuts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Dean. Well, we are kind of all singing from the same sheet of music because there's conservative values on stage today. But in addressing the economic malaise in this nation, what is our way forward? How do we address the fact that the federal government intrudes into every single aspect of our lives at some level, and every one of those intrusions cost us money? They make us less prosperous. And so the way forward is for Congress to reassert itself as the leaders at the federal level. And Speaker Ryan has telegraphed that he wants to do just that. But what we need to do as folks in the 3rd District is to make sure we send the right reinforcements to help accomplish those goals. It's going to take principled, determined leadership to stand up to the special interests. The special interests like a distorted tax code. The special interests like tax credits and tax favors for preferred industries. They love that and they need that, or at least they think they do. And it's about time that we send folks up there that have a proven track record of saying no to exactly that. For the last 5 years, I've been in the Georgia State Senate, and this year in particular, we've said a resounding no to the special interests of big business that have come to Georgia and said, if you don't do it our way, we're going to threaten you with economic terrorism and leave. I don't think that's how you legislate. I don't think it's how you rule and lead a country. I think the way forward for us is for Congress to reclaim its authority and to do that through the budget process, through the appropriations process. If we quit funding things, they quit happening. I can promise you that. We quit funding Planned Parenthood through the federal government. Through my efforts in the state legislature, we stopped funding taxpayer abortion in Georgia. How many of you knew we were paying for abortions in Georgia for 40 years through the state health benefit plan? Efforts like mine ended that. The way forward, friends, is for principled leadership to step up and do the hard things. And so we know we know the solution. It's not like we have the answers here and you don't. We all have the answers. We live it every day. We just need somebody to stand up and say, this is the way forward.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. We started with Mr. Ferguson, so I'll just start quickly with you. Would you like a 30-second rebuttal or response to anything you heard just now? Gentlemen, any of y'all?
No.
All right, we'll move on to our next question then. And we're starting with Mr. Flanagan on this one. Y'all push back up with me on this. I agree with you, Mr. Cray, that I heard everyone, I think, in talking about the economy also address in some form or fashion taxes and tax reform, budget concern over budget and deficit spending and so on. I also heard one or two things, and I'm not pinning anybody one way or the other. I'm really thinking about the presidential race, both the Democratic and Republican presidential primaries and race have been going on, and how you've had a good bit of discussion about trade policy. What do y'all think about trade policy? Should the United States either revisit or significantly reform its trade policies or not? And if you don't mind, I'll start with Mr. Flanagan on that one. What do you think about that?
Okay. We can compete with anyone in fair trade. Okay. Right now, all the goods manufacturers, all the services provided in this country have embedded taxation because of the tax code. The foreign goods that come into this country don't have that embedded tax because they don't have the income tax put it into the products. All right. So if you're gonna discuss fair trade or trade, then we've got to discuss taxation, because those goods that come in here should be taxed fairly against our goods that are produced here. Right now, we're making our goods that are produced in this country, it'd be like sending our athletes to the Olympics and make them run in lead shoes. And that's the problem. It needs to be fair trade, and you can get that accomplished by doing the fair tax. Now, other countries are still going to do stuff that's going to, play with their money supply, but it doesn't benefit us to tax products, because the consumer always pays the tax. You pay the tax. If you're going to do protectionist stuff, you're going to pay for it, not the foreign country.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix.
To expand a little bit on what Chip just touched on, I've been making agriculture. Agriculture is our number one industry here in Georgia, and I'm really the only candidate up here that's making that a big part of what I've been talking about. I've been meeting with farmers, meeting with cattlemen. I've lived in that arena. I'm by no means a farmer. I'm not implying that, but I've been a member of Georgia Farm Bureau. I've been out there talking to cattlemen. We've had cattle on our property when we lived in Carroll County. I worked with the extension agents over the last many years. I'm a master gardener. I was on the board to Keep Carroll Beautiful, et cetera. So I have great respect for an industry here in Georgia that's hugely important and very often overlooked, and that's the agricultural community. And I'm going to depart a little bit with some of my conservative friends, because I've been looking at some of the things within this TPP, which has been on the table with the trade partnerships with different countries. And there's a lot in there that does, in fact, benefit the agriculture community. As Chip alluded to, we have cattle to Japan. We were paying a duty of something to the tune of almost 40%. I think it was 36 or 37%. They were adding to the cost of our imports, where we're bringing in some of their stuff and we're not taxing it. So it's not a fair. We have to have fair trade. I'm all for worldwide trade. I believe that, as Chip said, we can compete on a worldwide market, but it's got to be fair. And that's the big thing. We got to have fair taxation, and we're getting beat to the pulp on a worldwide trade market because it's not fair for the United States.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pace.
Richard, I hate to tell you, but you're not the only guy up here that likes agriculture. I'm also a member of the Farm Bureau, and I agree with you on the points that you made. I do believe that we have an opportunity, if we're bright enough to learn to negotiate a little better, to do level the playing fields. And we compete in a world economy. There's no question about that. And so when we're competing against people that have lower wages, it's going to be hard for us to do that. We did lose some jobs to Mexico because of the wages. If we're competing against people who don't have an income tax rate as high as we do. We just read that Pfizer was on their way to Ireland because Ireland has a 12.5% tax rate. We had, I believe, a 27. I could be off a bit on those numbers, but you get the point. If we're driving our industry out of the United States because of our taxation, we need to take a real hard look at that. And like some others on the panel, I support the fair tax. I've signed a pledge on the fair tax. And I believe the fair tax would at least open a realm of discussion that we could begin to modify some of these taxation plans that are hurting our economy.
Thank you, sir.
We can do a lot of discussion on the national level, but I think it also comes down to the leadership that we can do right here in the 3rd District, in which we can have all the business people, the leading business people get together, structure things, and help the economy and build their own economy. We can build from within. We don't have to build from without. Although, I'm like, you stated, I'm open to world trade, but I'm also our own initiative should be in there too. We can do our own farming, since you like farming. You can do your own farming things, and we can increase the farming market that we have here in the district. But we can increase many other different things that we have in the district. We just need leadership to do it, and encouragement and persuasion of the major business leaders. We need to get those leaders together and form a council and have a direct influence on the third district.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Anders.
I think everybody can agree that taxes are not a good thing, and when it comes to fair trade, that's definitely not a good thing. I think when we look at the big picture, we're kind of in a situation right now of supply and demand, where the American people are demanding a supply of goods, and then they're getting them nice and cheap. And while we're all for fair trade and stuff like that, I think we need to see a little bit more made in America. I don't mind paying a little extra money for made in America, and I don't think anybody else does. So as far as fair trade goes, I think it's definitely something we need to look at and see what we can do to actually improve made in America so that we can buy in America and keep our money here where it needs to be.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crane.
I think one of the first things we need to do as a federal government is quit being punitive to our businesses here. We're our own worst enemy when we punish business activity. Ford Motor Company didn't choose Mexico just because the average wage down there was $5 an hour. It was all the other costs that it happens here in America that they have to comply with that they don't have to comply with in Mexico. We need to, instead of trying to force other countries to be like us, we need to find ways to be less onerous on our businesses here in America. We shuttered over half of our coal-fired plants here in Georgia in the last year because of a regulatory taking by the executive branch of this nation. And that costs businesses money. Peabody Mining, one of the biggest private mining companies in the world, is under Chapter 11 protection because of the executive branch's bad policy that is trying to put coal out of business. Now, that's not a big issue in our area, but at the end of the day, these costs all become very real to us. And if we're harming our businesses and making them less competitive by a bureaucratic maze that is just unintelligible and doesn't actually make any sense, that's where we need to start the process. Our government should be helping our businesses be competitive, not making them less competitive through regulation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferguson.
In my opening remarks, I talked about some bad policy decisions in Washington, and one of those was NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which cost our area over 30,000 textile jobs. That story is told over and over again in this district. Thomaston, Griffin, Lamar County, everywhere in this industry felt the impact, everywhere in this district felt the impact of bad trade policies. And so we know firsthand that we have to have policies in place that allow our companies to be successful on the world stage. But make no bones about it, that is only part of the equation. We have to get our house in order here. We cannot continue to make this the most expensive place on earth to do business. We must make it the most competitive place on earth to do business. We must be able to attract new investment not only from within, but from around the world. We need to be able to create jobs at a rate that we have not seen in at least the last 8 years. We can do that, but it's going to take determination. We have to create the right tax environment, we have to remove the regulations, and we have to reform our education system by getting Washington out of the way. It is paramount to the success of this nation. So yes, trade policy should be reformed. They should be mindful of what's going on in the world, but we have to get our house in order here first.
Thank you, sir. We started with Mr. Flanagan. Did we just ask a response or rebuttal to anything you've heard up here? 30 seconds?
No, not from me, no.
Okay.
I think
Mr.
everybody.
Mix, Mr. Pace?
Anybody else?
Well, if not, we'll move on to the next question. Mr. Mix, I believe you're going to get this one first. Affordable Care Act was signed into law by President Obama in 2010, 6 years in. In your opinion, what is the state of federal health care programs? What approach would you advocate as a member of the House of Representatives? 1 minute.
There's only one really good thing about the Affordable Care Act, and that is it has brought healthcare issues to the front and center for all of us to discuss and for us to try to learn what's the proper way to do it. And I won't sit in front of you tonight and tell you that I have all the answers to that. but I have spoken with a number of insurance providers, insurance carriers, et cetera, across the board, underwriters. And I got to tell you, nobody seems to be happy. Insurance companies aren't happy. Certainly consumers aren't happy. The doctors aren't happy. Nobody's winning here. It seems like a great idea. I mean, the whole idea and concept of affordable care, nobody's going to argue that we don't want affordable health care. I mean, we have a problem in this country. But basically, it's a big Ponzi scheme. And it's going to last at best another 5 years before it implodes, because to what Mr. Pace alluded to earlier, we have people taking from the system and not enough people giving into the system. So it's just a matter of time before it implodes. And the last part of the question was, so what are some of the solutions? One of the greatest things I've seen, and I know I don't have much time here, but is a thing called Hope for Healthcare, which takes the catastrophic costs. It puts a cap. The exposure that insurance companies have on an individual gets capped, and it's put off into a separate fund. Those are the ideas that we need, and I hope you'll Google Hope for Healthcare and take a look at that, because that's one of the solutions that could be put forth amongst very many others that could help move things in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pace, and by the way, I think, and Mr. McCoy told me, I think we went a little over on that, which I'm okay with. This is a big subject. So if you'd like to take a minute 20 or so, take a little extra time than a minute, please do. Go right ahead.
Okay, I'd be glad to do that. The Affordable Care Act got off to a very inauspicious beginning. If you can recall the notable quote, we had to pass the bill so we could learn what was in it. They did not know what they were passing, because the thing is so voluminous. It is a disaster for the economy. It is a disaster even for the people that are on it, and certainly has not lived up to anybody's expectations. There are alternative bills in the House. I think HB 2300 is one of them. I'm not suggesting it's the total solution, but I am suggesting there are better solutions than what we have now. The 10th Amendment would say that the government should not be engaged in it in the first place. Why in the world they're in our educational system when they're not supposed to be, and in our healthcare system when they're not supposed to be, is beyond me. And if I'm elected, I will do my very best to get them out of both.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The Affordable Care Act is 6 years old. How do you think it's doing, and what changes, if any, would you make to federal health care policy?
Well, I think, like you said, I think we got off to a very bad start, but it did help the bottom, sections that did not have health care. This is a massive thing when you look at our whole thing, where it's education or where it's health care, all the major problems, they're moving. Everybody's dying and moving on, and one generation hands education down to the next generation. I mean, everything's always moving, and we're working on it, but I mean, it's a massive problem. And the only way I think, though, that we need to focus on the 3rd District again and work at it on the 3rd District, not in Washington. That would be my answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Andrews.
So I'm going to kind of try and call it what it is, and it's Obamacare at the end of the day. You can call it affordable health care.
Obamacare is fine.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. And the reason I call it that is not to be derogatory, but I mean, that was pretty much what he wanted to push. I will tell you this, it won't be long before that turns into socialized medicine. And I see it going that way simply because I grew up with socialized medicine. While I'm very for every single American having access to health care, the Affordable Care Act is not that. It is just not that. I mean, that's really all I have to say about that. So what do we need to do? We need to repeal it. We need to get rid of it. There was a lot of things that they stuck in that bill, act, whatever you want to call it. The reason why it went through is because there was a lot of compromises. I think a lot of compromises that the American people weren't privy to. So for right now, my last stance is just going to be we need to repeal it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crane.
The Affordable Health Care Act, the Obamacare, as it's well known, is an unmitigated disaster. But I think it's everything we expected it to be. For those of us who gave it considerate thought, unlike Nancy Pelosi, we knew what was coming. We could see the writing on the wall, and we understood it. And we're 6 years into that. It's becoming very ingrained into our healthcare industry. Our healthcare professionals are fighting valiantly to produce quality care, but it's a difficult road. It's almost impossible. The state of Georgia, we have to pay right now $500,000 a year, the state as an employer, to produce a piece of paper that shows that the state is compliant with the mandates of the Affordable Health Care Act. That's not affordable, it's not effective, and it does nothing to promote care at all. At the end of the day, 6 years down the road, there's less care, the quality is diminished, the access to care is more difficult, and the costs are through the roof. So the solution is clear. Repeal it, open the market healthcare system up to the marketplace. Let the free market have its way as it did in years past, and give us a healthcare industry that we can all access without being entirely dependent on the government, or dependent at all on the government to make provision for that for us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferguson.
The Affordable Care Act is an abject failure on multiple fronts. It adds costs to business, it adds costs to individuals, and the single most important part of this conversation is that the patient does not receive better quality care, and it does not improve the access to health care. I can tell you that. I practice health care every single day, and access to insurance products is not the barrier that it is described to be. We have to fix this. We have to repeal it, and it should be replaced with a free market system. We need to allow insurance companies to sell products across state lines, and we need to allow individuals to have health savings accounts that match their yearly deductibles and can be transferred year to year with pre-tax dollars. Ideally, we'd love to see a flat tax, or in some cases a fair tax. But in the absence of that, we have to allow people to make their own investments in healthcare, and the decisions about healthcare must be between the healthcare provider and the doctor. This isn't working. We will wind up with a single-payer system that will destroy the creativity, the ingenuity, and the quality of healthcare delivered to every single American. Sam touched on it. He's lived it. It doesn't work. American healthcare is innovative, it's creative, it is the best in the world. We have to let the free market take over on this. Look at what happened when we deregulate industries. Unique things happen in the telecommunications industry, the airline industry. Get government out of the way, let the free market drive the process, and we will get a better result.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
Affordable Care Act. It's not affordable, and it's not providing care. It's a failure. Why does the government get into health care, insurance? Why is your employer providing your health care insurance? Because in the 1940s, the government put in wage and price controls, and industries wanted to attract employees, so they made the ruling that insurance was not considered compensation. That's when companies started providing insurance. It was because the government got involved and messed with employment law, and that's what created the mess. It's just taken this long for it to, and then the government wants to fix it by dabbling more. They can't fix it. On my card, on the back of my business card, it says, government's not the cure for the current economic crisis. Government caused the current economic crisis. Government caused this healthcare problem. You all can buy your homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance, and the government doesn't get in between you and your health insurance and your homeowner's insurance. The government doesn't get between you and your car insurance. We all buy our own car insurance, and we get to decide what it is, and the insurance company, we buy what we want, full coverage, half coverage, whatever. Get the government out of the way. They don't do anything but increase the cost.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix, we started with you. Do you have a response or rebuttal, anything you've heard?
No, sir.
All right, gentlemen, down the line.
I'd like to offer just one. Somebody turn my mic on.
You first, Mr. Pace, then 30 seconds, please.
Okay, I'd like to toss out an alternate idea. I think we've been focusing at the wrong end of the stick. I've spent the last 3 years working on wellness not fixing the problem, but preventing the problem. And I will maintain that it's not as complicated as you might think. And so I'd like to do a program that would put the benefit back to the individual and get the responsibility back to the individual. The only people doing educational programs for wellness are the insurance company because they have the risk. And so my solution would in part be begin to really truly train people as to how to stay well. I've met with the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic, and they've got some amazing programs, and I'd like to see those implemented more broadly, including the 3rd District, Rod.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas, go right ahead.
2 or 3 people have mentioned the fact that it just doesn't work. I'm very pragmatic, and I look at it. I try to list everything over here, what works and what doesn't work, and who it works for. I mean, it may work for the patient or it may work for the insurance companies, but you have to list it all out and work on it, and you have to start somewhere. Everything has a beginning and everything has an end. And you can't just throw it all out, and unless you got a new one. I didn't hear anybody say anything about a new program that they definitely have, except for the Affordable, Act. That's all we talked about.
That's right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Andrews, a response or rebuttal to anything?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. Crane? Gentlemen? All right. I tell you what, we've gone over our time that we had set out, and I apologize for that, but also appreciate your patience for that. Appreciate the candid way you've approached this forum and the answers tonight. So thank you very much. We're going to go to our closing statements in just a few moments, and we're going to start with Mr. Thomas. We'll reverse the order that we started our opening statements. So we'll go to you first. I just want to say one thing. There's obviously a great deal we couldn't talk about that y'all may have wanted to talk about, but roads and infrastructure, military preparedness, Social Security, just any number of issues. If there's anything that we didn't get a chance to address that's particularly important to you as a candidate in this, please bring that up somewhat during your closing statements. But other than that, please, Mr. Thomas, 2-minute closing statement starts with you.
For me. Thank y'all very much for coming tonight and for being here with us and listening to us. It's hard, as I said earlier, to put everything in 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and all I ask is that you go to rodthomasforcongress.org and that you read it out. But I do want to read one portion that I put in. There are 7 pledges that I make right here. The citizens of the United States are weary of a Congress that does not work. Party lines, special interests, personal agendas, they deflect from why our representatives are elected. The primary job of the U.S. House is to be the voice of the district that he or she represents. In other words, I pledge to be an employee of the people. I pledge to improve fractured political processes that's going on up there so that we have a better opinion of Congress. Right now, it's 5% or 10%. And I also pledge I pledge accountability. I pledge collaboration rather than confrontation. And I pledge transparency. And I ask for your vote on May 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pace.
I want to take you down a little bit different trail. Right now in Washington, D.C., I feel a sense of hopelessness. They're just kind of gridlocked up there, and it reminds me of a story that I learned as a young child. And it was the Philistine army on one side and the Israel and Judah armies on the other. And for 40 days they had been gridlocked. And standing in the middle was a giant named Goliath, and he had all the weapons of war of his time. And no one would confront him. A young shepherd boy named David showed up with some cheese and some bread. And as he ran across the field saying, I am willing to do this, let me be the one to go, he picked up 5 smooth stones. And as he approached the giant, he said, you come at me with weapons of this world, the spear, the javelin, the sword, but I come at you with the Lord God Almighty. And we know how the story ends. But he says to the giant, this day you will lie dead on the field, and this day I will have your head. And I submit to you that if we go to Washington, D.C. with the power of the Lord God Almighty, that one man can have the same impact upon our country that David had that day upon his. And so I ask you to send me to Washington, to D.C., to be your David.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mix.
I want to start by giving a tip of my hat to my other competitors up here on the stage. This is not easy, folks. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of work, and these guys have all been working hard. We all have. I think you've heard tonight that a lot of the same answers. I don't think you hear a lot of difference in the answers. We generally agree on all the points. We might say it differently, some better than others. I'm not saying I have all the answers again. But ultimately, it comes down again to choosing the candidate that you think will best represent you. It's not about who you like the best or who's the best looking. I'm probably not going to win on that front. I'll just say that right up front. So it's about who you think can represent you. And again, this was created to be a position that was to represent someone's to go, a regular guy, to represent your values, your beliefs. And I think I'm best that guy. I'm that guy. I'm a regular guy. I'm a hardworking guy. I own and operate small businesses. I live in the real world. We've also heard up here tonight about the Washington cartel and other words that have been used. Again, 3 of the people on the stage have been up there seeking this money that they speak out against. So you need to look into that and find out where the funding's coming from. And I hope that you'll take a look at all of our websites, learn about all of us, and choose the candidate you think will best represent you. I will also say that I am the only candidate in this race that has endorsed publicly Donald Trump. I don't think he's the perfect candidate, but I think he is the person that will bring it back to the people. And that's what I hope to do as well. That's what I am in this race for, is to bring it back to the people. So I hope you'll look to mix it up in 2016. Make America great again, and vote for Richard Mix. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flanagan.
Well, I want to thank all y'all, everyone for coming. I grew up military, so we didn't get to talk anything about military. So one of the big things on my website is that the VA and the military. I have veterans that work for me, and you want to know what socialized medicine's like? Go to the VA. Toothaches are on Thursday because toothaches always come on Thursday, right? Yeah, well, that's what I thought. That's what my guys say too. Hey, you know what? If you have a toothache on Friday, you got to wait till the next Thursday to go to toothache, and you got to get there early because guess what? If they don't see you that day, toothaches are the following Thursday. That's socialized medicine. They have a waiting list. We've all heard about this, and you know what that waiting list is? If we wait long enough, you die, and we don't have to serve you. That's socialized medicine. We don't want that. We have the best medical care in the world. What we need to do is treat our veterans that served us and got between evil and us. All those people that serve us and stand between evil and us, I was taught to respect by my father, who served his country for 20 years. And we need to pay our respects to all of our service members, our police, our fire, everyone, and take care of them. The VA is a bureaucratic nightmare. There's no way to fix it. Give the veterans a health care card where they can go to the free market and go see a dentist to get their tooth fixed when it hurts on Monday, not wait till Thursday or the next Thursday or the next Thursday. So that's one of the things. I want to point you to another website. It's called the Federal Election Commission, FEC site. You can go and you can look at every candidate's where they're getting their money. It's right there. Everybody can do it. It's free. It doesn't cost you a dime. That's how you can tell where the Washington cartel is. Listen to their ads. Who's paying for their ads? That's how you can tell who's taking the money. It's just that simple. Go to my site, chipflanagan.com, but go to the FEC site at federaalelectionscommission.com. Thank you. Appreciate your vote on the 24th.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferguson.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. And I sit back and I think, like many of you, that over the last few years, I've watched a country almost give up on the American dream. I've watched Washington neglect the people that get up every single day and go to work, pay their bills, and raise their families in a Christian environment. I many times feel like doing the right thing almost makes me the bad guy. And I'm tired of feeling like that. And that's why I'm running to go to Washington. Hard work, doing the right thing, and conservative values are the cornerstone of America. That always will be. And if you will send me to Washington, I will make sure that it will stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Dean. And I want to thank everyone also for being so generous with your time this evening. It's getting kind of late. There's some things to be optimistic about, though. I mean, honestly, you got to look up here on the stage, and you heard some very similar things in a lot of ways. But the one thing that we can be very optimistic about is that the next representative from the 3rd District will not be an attorney. So that's a good thing. Trust me. And yes, that is an applause line, because there's not an attorney up here. But we ought to know what the job is we're actually hiring someone for. Our vote is sending somebody to represent us in a capacity of transferred authority. We as individuals, when we elect anyone, we transfer just a portion of our God-given authority to that person in a civil sphere. And so what is the job? And the job is a very simple job. I've done it for the last 5 years as a legislator here in Georgia. The oaths are very similar: to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the essence of that role is found in the preamble. Toward the end of it, it just says that our goal, the whole purpose of this framework of government, this whole concept of a nation founded on rights given by God and not by government, the whole concept of our government is to secure those same blessings for our next generation. For our next generation. It's honestly a very simple job. It just takes people willing to do the job, and it can be difficult at times, but to cast those tough votes when they need to be cast, to come up with the good ideas when they need to be brought forward, and to persuade others to join you in the good fight. Because I think we do live in the greatest nation on earth. I know we do. And I know it's so because God ordained it that way. And so when we get that orientation right once again, you'll see America rise. You'll see us rise. And we'll be that shining light on a hill. I ask for your vote. I ask for your prayers. And I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anders.
So I'm going to leave you with a little story tonight. As I said earlier, my wife and I have been married for 13 years. We met in the month of March, and we got married in the month of October. So it was a pretty short space of time. And as typically, the man always has to go and ask his father-in-law for his daughter's hand in marriage. And David, back in the day, was an avid golfer, and that'll all kind of come into play. But there were 3 things when I met with him that he said that I needed to make sure I took care of. The first one was always take care of his daughter and put her higher than anything else, because that's what we're missing in our society today is husbands and men in general are not doing that. And then number 2, he said, you need to work hard, Sam. He said, I don't mind what you do as long as you work hard at it, because when you work hard at it and you take care of your family, then you'll take care of number 1. And he said number 3, and so I kind of leaned in. I'm starting to sweat at this point, so I kind of leaned in, and he just looked at me and he said, you need to learn how to play golf. And before you know it, that Christmas, there was a set of golf clubs under the tree, and I learned how to play golf. The reason I point that story out to you all is because at the end of the day, while I may not have any political experience, and there's lots of people who say, well, maybe it's next time, and they're already discounting me right off the bat, I do vote with common sense. At the end of the day, it comes back to common sense. And when you look at what we need to send to Congress is a leader. We don't have a leader for our country right now, and that's what we need to send. So what experience do I have? The last 16 years when I said I would uphold and defend the Constitution. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I would ask for your vote to send me to Congress. The final question I'll leave you with is when you go to vote and you go to check that box, ask yourself this question: will I see that individual again? Because that individual needs to be for the people and about the people. And so the answer, when you check that box, needs to be yes. I know that individual is going to come back and they're going to look after me and I'm going to see them again and they're not going to disappear on the hill. And I thank you all for coming out tonight. And sir, I appreciate everything you did for us this evening. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And gentlemen, thank you all once again. This has been a great forum. But again, I appreciate your patience as we've gone a bit over. I know several of you and several folks in this room have a few miles to go before we sleep, but thank you for coming out. Thank you for running for office. And thank you for your answers tonight. I thought it was a great forum. I think you all did a wonderful job. I appreciate it. And thank you from the chamber. Good night.